Stephanie Boag is my guest. We played Welcome to New York for a very good reason, which you'll no doubt get to. Stephanie is the author of a couple of books which we are calling the Sticky Pineapple series, which in itself is intriguing enough. Welcome, Steph.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. It's in a totally different guise. We should let people know that you and I do know one another from the fact that you used to be my boss's boss, but that's not why you're here.
No, that's not why I'm here.
No, it was a pretty persuasive argument, though, that you said that unless you... No, none of that. No, we do want you here because you have a story that is interesting and deeply personal, and so we thought we'd spend, half an hour or so fleshing that out. So my understanding is you started your life in Hamilton in Western Victoria, which will have a few people listening over there. Kick it off from there.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. So I grew up on a farm in the Western District in Hamilton. I went to primary school there and did all of my secondary schooling as well at Monterey College before moving on.
Hello, Monterey College people listening.
Yeah, before moving on to university to study journalism in Canberra and then public relations at RMIT.
Okay. So it's a little threatening to have someone in the studio who actually knows something about journalism and public speaking because we're in real strife now. Rob's in the next studio looking really worried all of a sudden. So you always wanted to be a journo? Was that...
Yeah, I became really passionate about writing and journalism, which really stemmed from I went on Rotary Exchange to Canada when I was 15, 16 years of age, and I got the opportunity to work in a newspaper over there. And from then on, I just really wanted to get involved in writing and communications of any sort. I didn't really care in what channel. And so I got the opportunity after I left school to go and do journalism in Canberra.
Okay. So the exchange student thing, let's just dwell a moment there. That was Rotary, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. The importance of that kind of experience in your life in terms of rounding out your teenage years, how important?
Oh, incredibly important, particularly from where we just started, that I had grown up on a farm. We'd never been overseas. I didn't know anyone who had travelled at that point in my life. This was back in 1995. And so to go to the other side of the world for 12 months and live with lots of different families and have experiences of a lifetime were incredible. And it absolutely shaped then what I came back, how I focused on what I wanted to do with my career, which I knew needed to involve a lot of travel and experience the world and have lots of different opportunities in life.
Did that mean that there was a Canadian who found out something about the wool industry in Hamilton as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They were totally amazed about where I'd come from, even though I also went to a small town over in Canada. It was the Lakes District of Canada, so it was really beautiful and really famous. People had expensive cottages there, but it was a far cry from my humble beginnings back in Hamilton and growing up on a farm with sheep and cattle.
Had you ever been overseas before?
No.
So Mum and Dad pushed you onto the plane and said, see you until 12 months.
Yeah, well, it was a surprise to all of us because it was just written up in a school newsletter, and I just was bored after school one day, and I still remember I was sitting on the couch and I had my feet up on the edge of the couch, and I'm reading this newsletter and it just jumped out. And so I asked my parents if I could apply, and I think they were in another area of the house, and I heard sure, go for it, thinking the same as me, that it would just be a great experience to go through the interviews. And then a few months later and 13 interviews later, because Rotary is pretty tough to get onto these international exchanges. And before I knew it, I was, one of the youngest people in Australia to be jetting off to the other side of the world on a 12-month Rotary exchange.
Did the family get the chance to come across and see you?
No, that wasn't how things worked back then. In fact, Rotary were very strict at that time about how much communication you could have with your family. So I was only able to talk to my parents on the phone for 15 minutes once a month.
Once a month?
Everything was through snail mail, so I wrote lots of letters, hence my writing skills probably improved a lot. And they actually discouraged families from coming over and visiting their children because it just created a lot of homesickness as well. So, no, I didn't see my family for 12 months.
Gave them 12 months to move house while you were gone.
Well, sort of, because eventually, not long after that, we did move into Hamilton. My dad ran a woolen mill with a couple of other farmers by that stage, and my mum was a primary school teacher at the local primary school and vice principal. So, so when I came back, we were living in town.
But they did tell you where you didn't go to
they did give the address. They did want me to come home.
Oh, that's always good. Yeah. I'm sure there's a story about that. Someone told me once about that happening. Someone moved house and forgot to, as we were saying off air, my son turned up from London on Thursday last week and forgot to mention to me that he was in town until I rang him on Sunday to see what he's up to. Oh, I'm in Melbourne. That's right. Yeah, great. Excellent. So, it's good. So, university in Canberra, again, moving away from home. I guess the experience in Canada had given you that opportunity to be independent.
Yes. Yeah, I was just very determined at that stage, and I thought that at that point journalism was everything I wanted to do. So I applied everywhere around Australia and got the Canberra journalism course. I did that for 12 months, and then I transferred down to RMIT to do the public relations course. It was the best course in Australia and very difficult and competitive to get into. And at that stage, I just felt like I still wanted to use my writing skills, but I felt that there were different and varied career pathways, probably, better applicable to my strengths that were growing and developing at that age. And so I did that for a few years before then going on and doing an MBA.
Okay. And you then obviously graduated. What sort of work did you do to start off with?
So I worked in a government department and I was supporting 7 different ministers with the possible parliamentary questions. So for people who want to know what that's like when they walk into question time, I was the author behind their questions and answers. And I would make sure that these 7 ministers had their portfolio of questions ready for question time, which were on a whole range of rural and regional development topics because I was working for the Department of Rural and Regional Victoria.
Okay. In Melbourne?
Yes, in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then I moved overseas for a couple of years where I worked as a radio broadcast journalist for the BBC on a program called Up All Night. I would do that by night. And during the day, I just did lots of different kinds of jobs, basically to save and travel and see the world, which I did. Yeah,
nice. Now it's getting really threatening. Not only have you studied as a journalist, you've done radio broadcasting, so we're in all sorts of strife. You see, Rob's got up and walked out. That's how bad he's finding it. All right, so fast forward into a serious relationship, obviously, and marriage and a change of job scene. So you and I ran into each other working for a significant corporate. Let's leave it at that for the time being. The people who know will know. Where did you meet your husband? Had you started in the workplace or?
So after my stint in the UK, he had also been over in the UK for a couple of years at the same time. We didn't meet. We were in the I was in his house in London visiting other mates. He was out travelling with his parents who were listening in. Around the world as well. So we subsequently met back at the good old SB Hotel on New Year's Day, where I knew all of his other mates. I had never met him and he'd never met me that we knew of. And we subsequently got together then and we were together for about 8 years before we moved to Vietnam, where he proposed. And we got married on a beautiful island called Phu Quoc, where we had over 150 friends and family fly over for the wedding.
Nice.
And it was amazing.
Yeah. Now, the major corporate with whom you and I both worked, you worked your way through to quite a senior level in that organisation.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, so when I came back from Vietnam, I really wanted to work for a company or an organisation where I felt like there were many different career paths.
We can say it's a bank. Let's say that.
Yeah. So I was looking for a really major corporate. I was fortunate enough, obviously, to land in a top 4 ASX listed company. So there were multiple career paths. I started off in a communications role, again playing to my strengths and my background in communications. And I ended up working all over this particular organisation in executive manager and chief of staff roles to risk in the CEO. I worked in transformation across their retail and corporate and institutional businesses, as well as technology and operations. And I ended up running call centres and operations type businesses for, wonderful groups of staff before I decided to take a redundancy last year and start writing my books.
Sounds like a plan. And the transformation role that you played in was where you and I crossed paths for the first time. You probably
That's
thought,
right.
Who's this yobbo coming in to turn the place on its head?
Yeah, I do remember actually one of the first sessions bringing in a guy who did meditation, and you piped up and said, "Oh, I don't like meditation."
Yep.
And I was like, "Who's this bloke?"
And yes, he's still at that organisation, still providing those. Yeah, I don't have time to meditate, particularly since he continued to talk all the way through it. Hang on a minute, how can I relax? You're standing behind me talking. Another story for another day. So, okay, so you took the redundancy and you have written books, but these books, as we said, are deeply personal. So, in parallel, all that way along, people didn't know what was going on in your life. Tell us the story, because that's what the books are all about.
Yeah. So after we got married, we were I was in my about 35 at that stage.
Only a year or two ago. Watch and learn, ladies and gentlemen.
That's
Watch
right.
and learn. Yep.
Like everyone, we thought that getting pregnant ourselves would come naturally. We tried on our own for a couple of years. We all the health tests just kept coming back, normal, that we were fit and healthy. So we tried all kinds of different things, again, just trying to get ourselves in as positive mind and body to hopefully have success having children naturally. After a couple of years of doing that, it became clear that we needed some medical support and intervention. So we started down the path of IVF, and I went to a major clinic in Melbourne and worked with a specialist who I had also known when I was working at the Royal Women's Hospital. So it was someone that I really trusted. And at 37 years of age, started down the IVF path.
So, a statistic request without notice. Do we have any sense of what proportion of the population have difficulty with fertility?
Yeah, so 1 in 6 people are going through IVF and infertility. So that's about 40 million people globally. It's huge and it's growing. And that's why, even you and I have had these conversations about whether or not these books are relatable to someone like yourself or, anyone. You're going to be working with men and women who are either going through this or yet to go through it. And most of the time you don't even know.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the things that surprised me when you told me that you'd written books about this. I'm thinking, how would you know? Like, surely the level of emotional, spiritual, whatever stress that you're putting yourself through, you must have to have a capacity to either do one or two things. Let the world know you're going through it, or have an incredible resilience and ability to hide it. And clearly, you and I, literally being in the same office for 2 years while you're going through this, absolutely not even a sense of it.
Yeah. So you were working for me at the time I had kicked off IVF, and obviously it went through many years and many different roles as I was still navigating my career. But I chose not to tell anyone at work initially. It got to a point where I had to, because I was having so many miscarriages and required so many surgeries and and appointments that I did confide with some of my local bosses, but very discreetly, and a couple of people. But for the most part, I tried to keep things as normal as possible. I had most of my appointments before work, but there were many times, and including in the period of time that you were working for me then, I was taking phone calls in an office to tell me that I had been unsuccessful, or I was experiencing miscarriages while I was still leading and working with the town, and I knew that. But I, just had to, or I chose just to keep going and try and keep things as normal as possible, because I didn't know how long my journey was going to be before we were going to be successful. And I always believed that we would eventually be successful. I just didn't know how long it was going to take.
Yeah. I think that in my mind, as I read the two books, and folks, these are really easy to read in terms of the capacity to read them. There's one or two things in there a little bit confronting that are not so easy to read, but I mean easy to read in terms of consuming the content. There's some parallels there with people who have mental health issues in terms of I don't want the people around me know that I'm going through this. And I guess they're in some respects interrelated too, if you are going through what you've been through, that the mental health stresses are there. The capacity to put on a mask, if you want to call it that, and that sounds negative and I don't mean it to, it must just be exhausting mentally. It's exhausting physically what you're going through. How do you push through that?
I think, as I sort of said before, I really focused on what I could control. So getting pregnant was not something I could control. I had no control over that. So I was, by this stage, in the hands of the medical professionals who were just telling me when I needed to show up, when I needed to put a hormone injection into my body, when I needed to go for day surgery to remove eggs, ready for embryo transfer. So I was very much in the hands of other people. So what I tried to control very much was how strong of mind and body I could be. So I went to health retreats. I did a lot of meditation and mindfulness and yoga. And I just tried to put myself in as positive, and strong mental and physical state, because that part I could control. The rest of it was completely out of my control.
And the role of your husband in this, physically not going through what you're going through, but emotionally going through what you're going through, I would have thought a critical component to getting through this process. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, he came with me, or at least dropped me off to most of my appointments when they were serious appointments, like when we're literally waiting for a heartbeat, and which is why I called my adults book Sticky Pineapple and A Powerful Mind Waiting for a Heartbeat, because so much of the process, you are having an ultrasound and you're waiting to see whether or not, there's a heartbeat or two heartbeats, as the case may be, which you read about in one of my books, where I was pregnant with twins and I subsequently lost that twin. The other one survived, and she's now a beautiful little 6-year-old today, which inspired my children's book, Sticky Pineapple and the Little Precious Gems, How I Came into This World. But yeah, absolutely. He was, he's a much quieter, more introverted person. So, he was a very calm influence and supportive influence for me, navigating through it. I did choose to share and open up with our very close friends and family. That was very important, both for him and for I, because we didn't see psychologists along the way, something that I write about in my book, where I actually regret that. I did subsequently afterwards, which you also read about in my adults book. And that's sort of what inspired me to eventually write the books, as a resource, really, to help other people out there navigating the journey, in the hope that maybe some of the things that I talk about that I did might help others.
I'm speaking with Stephanie Boag, who is the author of 2 books, both with the word Sticky Pineapple in the head. We're going to come back and ask that question, the obvious question, but what is that about? Steph's in the studio with me, and we'll talk about where you can get the books a bit later on. All right, obvious question, why Sticky Pineapple?
So apart from it being a very engaging title, pineapple means a few different things when you're going through infertility. So the first is, it's a powerful symbol for women struggling with infertility. The shape of the pineapple, the top of it, reminds women to stand tall as if wearing a crown, and that's to help counter the negative feelings that can affect the mind and body. And it's also a visible symbol in a way to break the silence and normalise the conversation about infertility.
I've just realised you've got a pineapple on your shirt.
I have. I've even got my own pineapple merchandise, and I've got a website as well called www.stickypineapple.com.
Oh, we couldn't possibly put that website out on the radio. Stickypineapple.com, you say?
Which talks all about it. But the other important area as well, and although not scientifically proven, there is a theory that eating pineapple helps with embryo implantation. So I ate a lot of pineapple while I was pregnant, or trying to get pregnant. And I would also wear a symbol of a pineapple every time I went for embryo implantation.
Yep. Okay. And the sticky bit?
That's just a bit of fun.
Oh, okay.
Pineapple sticky, isn't it?
Okay, fair enough. No, I'm thinking to myself, there must be something in that. I did actually ask an AI tool during the week as to why sticky pineapple is significant, and it came back and explained the pineapple, but I never did so much about the sticky bit. Okay, so without going into too much detail, because it's clearly personal, what does the process look like? So, okay, you go to the doctor says you're going to have to go through an IVF process if you want to be successful in having children. What are some of the big ticket items that you go through to get to that point?
So initially for us, because we were deemed to be healthy, and this was sort of unexplained infertility is what they call it, they thought that we might be successful just having what they called IUI. And so that's without having to go through the full cycle of IVF and collecting eggs and then having them, transplanted, which is what I eventually ended up having to do 8 times. So the first cycle didn't involve that, but it did involve them giving me hormone injections just to help sort of stimulate, to help with implantation. So that initially, the first time we were pregnant, I subsequently lost that baby. And then after that, we just moved very quickly then into IVF. IVF is very significant. You present on the first day of your cycle. And then from there on in, you've got doctors and nurses telling you by the very date and the very time what you have to do, which is when you have to inject yourself, a bit like a diabetic, injecting a hormone into your stomach. So you become, very black and blue, but you become very used to putting injections into yourself. And those things will trigger lots of different things. And that's to then help with going in for surgery under general anaesthetic, to then try and collect as many eggs as they can possibly get. Mm-hmm. Then they take those eggs to the lab, they look at them, they see which ones are viable, some survive, some don't. For me, in the early stages, I wasn't ever able to collect many eggs, so there wasn't many that were ever viable. They were the ones that they tried to implant, but they were never successful, so I had many, many miscarriages. Eventually, the doctors then did a laparoscopy and a gastroscopy, and they found mild endometriosis.
Right.
And so that was removed. I then subsequently had a bumper egg collection of about 17, which was quite unheard of for my age, because by this stage I was 40 years of age. So the quality of my eggs was diminishing, and the number, but that then meant that I had a lot of eggs that they were able to send away for testing to check viability. And then I had a significant number of quality eggs for them to choose from to then implant. And that's where I subsequently had the 2 implanted, where I had one surviving twin. And then 2 years later from that same egg collection, I had another successful pregnancy, which my daughter's now 4 years old. 4 years of age.
Once the embryo is implanted,
Mm-hmm.
is the pregnancy, in inverted commas, normal as any person who's had a natural conception, or are you continually having different tests and having more hormone injections and all that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, from the time of embryo implantation, it's called the 2-week wait. and you literally just wait for 2 weeks to see whether or not that embryo has taken. You can't do pregnancy tests or anything because your body is full of hormones making you feel pregnant anyway. So you have no idea whether you are or you aren't. You just feel pregnant the whole time. And then you get a phone call, which is what I was talking about earlier, taking these phone calls while at work to tell you whether or not that embryo was taken and therefore you're pregnant or you're not. And once the pregnancy kicks in, then you wait another couple of weeks. You're then doing ultrasounds, waiting for a heartbeat, and to check whether or not your baby is growing as it should. Some of mine, obviously, I ended up with 2 that made it to full term. The rest, I had miscarriages. Once you're then kicking into that, because you're already deemed high risk, you're being regularly checked by a specialist pretty much all through your pregnancy, and also then depending on what's going on with your pregnancy. And for me, as you'll read in the book, I had some real challenges all the way through both pregnancies. So I was regularly being monitored to make sure those little babies were growing and developing and were safe.
So this might be a silly and maybe even insensitive question, but was going through it with your second child easier than the first because you knew what to expect?
No, I was just as anxious.
Yeah.
And because of the challenges that I had through pregnancy as well, with lots of blood loss, which automatically my mind would think, I must be having a miscarriage. So, no, it wasn't. It wasn't any easier. The only part that was easier was the fact that I had 2 embryos remaining. They implanted little Ruby, and that's how I came up with her name, because I saw the embryo as I put it up and it just looked like a shining little gem. And so I knew then and there that if this was successful, her name was going to be Ruby. And that part was easier because at least, that was successful very quickly, whereas it took me 9 cycles before I had success the first time. Yeah.
Well, these 2 books are both available on that very large organisation. What do we call them? Amazon, I think is their name, isn't it? They're both called Sticky Pineapple, and one is called Sticky Pineapple and a Powerful Mind Waiting for a Heartbeat. That one's targeted at grown-ups and people who are either going through the process, may go through the process, know someone who could go through the process, or maybe even a radio host. It's got 55 pages in it, so it's not going to take you 2 weeks to read. The other one is called Sticky Pineapple and Little Precious Gems, How I Came into This World. I think we've all been there as parents. Someone at some stage is going to say, yeah, but how did I turn up? What made me? And having this resource, which is, again, only got 18 pages in it, is a picture book. I'm holding it up to the microphone for people so they can see it at home, you understand. And both books are specifically written with a specific audience in mind, the kids that have come into the world this way, or potentially a brother or sister of someone or a cousin of someone who has come into the world differently. And this other one here that I'm waving about now, the one for the grown-ups, are both available. Now, tell us about the awards, because we've only got a couple of minutes before we have to let you go.
Yeah, so my books won the New York City Big Book Awards, which is pretty amazing.
Yep.
So the adults book was a winner in the pregnancy and childbirth category, and the children's book won distinguished favourite in the children's educational category. And what I would say with the children's book as well, regardless of whether or not your child's been born via IVF, these books are still applicable to any child. I was a guest author at my children's, my grade preppies primary school for Book Week, and I read it to 200 kids. Now, only a handful of those would have been born via IVF, whether they knew it or not. And all the kids laughed and engaged in it and were so curious and asked lots of questions.
Yep.
And it just created a really good conversation for parents at home to be able to talk to their children about the way in which they entered the world.
At the start of this program, I had a little rant about a particular festival that's coming up towards the end of December. And traditionally, there have been presents, apparently, according to the 4,000 ads that are on the TV. These would make ideal Christmas presents, would they not?
Absolutely. And, I think that's the thing. I would just love to see them in the hands of, millions of people out there who either need them or just, want to share them with the world.
Stickypineapple.com, you said before. Is that a website that people should visit?
It is.
Can they get the books there, or do they have to go to Amazon or other places like that?
You do have to go to Amazon, Booktopia, Readings. They're available through thousands of online channels, but the website will tell you where and how to get them.
Okay. Stephanie Boag is this young lady's name, Boag, as in James.
That's right.
As distinct from Travis, who's the
Haven't
footballer.
heard that before.
Yeah, no, I would imagine that's the case. What a great thrill it is for you and I to have a conversation in a meeting room where it doesn't talk about performance management or goals for the end of the season. Thank you for being part of this, and thank you for dropping into Geelong to talk about it, because I know you've come all the way down from Melbourne.
That's right, and thank you so much for having me.